You're watching the PoliticIt podcast.
Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt podcast. I'm Senator John Johnson, and we've got Don Guymon with us today. Don is the chair of the Davis County Republican Party. Nice to have you, Don.
Great. It's nice to be here.
I've wanted to have you on ever since I've always known who you are and known you, but I got to know you a little bit better when we were at the national convention, and that was quite an adventure.
Yeah, it was fun. Got to sit down and eat breakfast a couple of times.
Yeah. It was an interesting place to be. I remember when Donald Trump walked in, and this is after he'd been shot, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that an amazing moment?
Amazing moment. The bandage on his ear. No, that was an incredible moment. That's a moment I'll always remember.
Yeah, me too. There was just such a feeling. There was such a feeling in that room.
Yeah.
Of a destiny in a way, right? I mean.
Well, the thing about that event was, just think how differently if things had gone differently on when we were in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, if
we would have been if he hadn't turned his head, that week would have been a week of mourning, and we would have been having to have an open convention while we were mourning our candidate. It would have been an entirely different scenario, but instead we were there celebrating what I think literally a modern day miracle.
Well, and don't you think, wasn't that the feeling in the room?
Yeah.
That was a miraculous event.
Yeah, I think I really do. I really believe that. I think we saw God's hand there, because just think what damage that would have done to the country if that would have been successful. Yeah. And I think we needed someone strong, because once again we were at a critical time for our country at that time, and it's very grateful that Donald Trump was saved.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Davis County Republicans and how that whole scenario came down with you winning as party chair. And
yeah, well, I've been involved in the Davis County Republican Party since I was elected as a county delegate back in '98, and was elected to the State Central Committee in '99, and I represented Davis County on the State Central Committee from 1999 until 2021, and I served as a ledge chair, the C&B chair. I've been like a rules chair for at least 8 or 9, convention, a lot of chairs that asked me to be their rules chair. So I also served at the state level, but 2021 I decided I wanted to take a break. I went and we helped found the Davis County Conservatives, but then last year, they came and asked me to be the Constitution Bylaws chair again, and so I decided to get back and be involved. And then we had an opening come up for, because the chair, Yemi, was taking a spot in the Trump administration, and the vice chair was not running. So I thought this would really be a good opportunity, because I think we're really at a critical time in our state and for our and for our party. We've talked a lot about SB 54 and the caucus-convention system, but I also think we have we need principled leadership. So I felt that this was the time to do it. I've had people want me to run for chair, and I had done it once before and had other times encouragement, but this time it just felt right.
That's cool. So what was that election like?
Well, it wound up being really as uneventful, because I wound up having someone file against me, then he dropped out, and I was rather surprised, because I'll be the first to tell you,
you weren't
liberal,
challenged.
Some Republicans in Davis County don't necessarily like Don Guymon, because I'm conservative and I'm unapologetically conservative, but I didn't have a challenge. But I also feel that people knew that I had served the party and had always been the voice, and would be someone who would represent our values and do all I could to make our party even better.
Yeah, and you've been involved in legislation. You've followed a lot of legislation. You have this group called Grassroots,
yeah,
right? And you have a scoring system that you use every year. Tell us about that.
Well, with Utah Grassroots, the organization has been technically around since 1992. In 2001, they came and asked me if I would join their board and become the author of the report, because the person who had been authoring it was moving out of state. But with Grassroots, so I started writing the report, then I became chair, and I believe about 5 years later. But Grassroots, I think, is a unique organization here in the state. We really try to look at principles of the Constitution, limited government, lower taxes. We don't make a lot of money. It's a part-time group. Our board generally has around 7 people on our board. But I'm not out to make money. And to be honest with you, I'm not out necessarily to be the most popular person in the room. I want to have a scorecard that I think really truly reflects how we believe. And so,
how do bills make it to the grassroots report?
We take a look at those bills throughout the session. We do send a weekly update out, but at the end of the session, we grab about 70 to 80 bills, and we get together in a conference room and with a bunch of other board members. I have like Steve Stromness, who's from Carbon County, Lowell Nelson, Drew Chamberlain, David Pine, Peter Cannon. Hopefully I'm not leaving anyone out. But we get together and we look at principles. And at the beginning of every meeting, I said, we're taking people out of this and personalities, and we're just sticking on the bills and how we feel the vote should have gone. And we
based on
those principles with the party. Once again, limited government, Constitution, family, pro-life.
So that it's interesting you bring those things up because those are issues that unite us as a group, right?
And I really,
if we're gonna have some kind of litmus test,
yeah,
maybe those would certainly be things we'd want to include.
And that's one thing I really try to do in my politics is I try to take the personalities out of it as much as possible and make sure that we look at principle, because to me it's all about principles, and sometimes recognizing that we may have a disagreement here. But as long as you don't get personally attack me, we can disagree on this bill. We can be friends and allies the other times when we agree. But I think, because once again, I think that's one of the things that's really wrong with our politics today, is we have too much personality and not enough principles.
I think that's true. And you're right. I mean, there are principles that really bring us together as a group, right?
Yes. Pastor Beckel, who's with the...
Yeah, we had him on the podcast just a week or so ago.
He recently prayed at the recent State Central Committee meeting, and he talked about the things that unite us. And he talked about, as Republicans, he talked about uniting on the Bible, the Constitution, and our party platform. Those are things that should unite us and unify us. And that's one thing I've always talked about. I generally don't talk about unity just for unity's sake, but you need to unite around principles. And the principles, once again, I agree with them, the Bible, the Constitution, and our Republican Party platform, which I think all three go hand in hand.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And that's kind of what drives your grassroots organization.
That's what drives our group is, once again, so basically just let people know how people have voted. And we're unique amongst groups. We actually rank the governor, and I have legislators' voting records clear back to, I believe, 92. But once again, to me, it's all about the principles. And I laugh because sometimes people say, "Oh, it seems like you're going after this person." We don't. Years ago in Davis County, we had someone who reached out to me because they wanted to go after a legislator, and they were going to run a campaign against them. And they asked me, "Hey, can you go after them?" And I said, "No, that's not the way we operate." I think a great example for me is back in 2000, I had a pretty heated legislative race. She beat me against Cheryl Allen. But a few years later, when we were doing the grassroots...
So you actually ran for the legislature?
I ran for the legislature, yeah, and we lost. But a few years later, she had a bill that was she actually sponsored a resolution, I believe, to get rid of the Patriot Act. Well, I put that as a good bill because, once again, it's something I supported. Because, once again, I think we have to find our allies and work together when we can agree on a principled approach. And so, I had, that was a very heated race, but I felt, hey, here's something good that she did. Let's make sure, let's point it out and reward them when they do something good.
Yeah. Good point. We're going to take a break and we'll come right back.
Tired of media bias? Frustrated by political noise? PoliticIt.com cuts through the clutter, giving you real facts, clear analysis, and unbiased insight on the issues that matter most. Stay informed, stay empowered. Whether it's elections, policy changes, or breaking news, we've got you covered. No spin, no agendas, just truth you can trust. Visit PoliticIt.com today, because informed citizens shape the future. PoliticIt.com, where politics meets clarity.
Welcome back to PoliticIt. We've got Don Guymon with us today, and of course Don's the Republican Party chair in Davis County. So, so during the break we talked a little bit about the public lands issue and some of the things that Mike Lee proposed in the big beautiful bill that it ended up getting thrown out of there. But one of the problems I had with it was that what was being said in the press and online was very different than what he proposed in the bill. And I couldn't believe the attacks he got from people in our own party.
Yeah, it was surprising to me and disappointing, because 2/3 of the state of Utah is owned by the federal government. I believe if we follow the Constitution, the amount of land owned by the federal government in the state should be minimal, basically, for defense, very, very minimal. And I looked at this as a great opportunity to take ownership of federal lands and transfer it to private ownership. Because in my opinion, we talk about Marxist approach is where somewhat, the government owns the means of production.
Right.
Well, if the federal government owns such a mass amount of land here in the state of Utah, isn't that the government owning the means of production? And I think this bill was a reasonable approach. From my understanding, it was basically just land around cities and giving an opportunity to build homes. I know people had concerns about there are going to be mega mansions, but if someone builds a mega mansion, that means their home's going to become, and it's going to have a ripple effect, and we're going to have more homes, because housing prices in the state of Utah are atrocious right now.
Yeah, and the limiting factor really is available property along the Wasatch Front where the population base is.
This is a way, and if you're going to be, basic economics 101 says, if you're going to take price down, you have to, increase the supply. And so I think we really missed an opportunity to do this. And the thing I felt was unfair to Mike was people who are conservative or supposedly limited government individuals were attacking Mike because of this.
Yeah, and attacking him unfairly in a way, because what it actually said in the bill versus what people perceived it said were very different.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got large tracts of land that are actually within city boundaries that are managed by the BLM, right?
Yeah.
And that's the type of land he was talking about.
So I think so the issue we have is, so we have this great opportunity, but there's some people who are mad because Mike has made some endorsements, for example, in the state chair race. And so suddenly we're going to attack Mike just
for everything that he's doing. Yeah.
And I think this is where I get frustrated, because it's where the principled approach goes out. Once again, we can argue in the semantics of how a bill is, but I think we missed an opportunity, and that's one thing that gets me frustrated about our political system right now. It's not principle based. Once again, grassroots, I always have tried to make it a principle based approach. Take people out of it. If someone does great, when you're great, we may not get along, but if they do great, I'm happy about it. But I think that the attacks on Mike were very unfair, and I think it was very disappointing to see that in a state that people who claim to want limited government were advocating for the continued government ownership of land instead of having that land transferred to private ownership.
Right.
I think we really missed a great opportunity.
Especially land that is in the middle of a city that we can't even tax.
And once again, we had an opportunity to develop that land, and so I hear people are nervous about like 15-minute cities or what have you. Well, these are the ways we can avoid these. And high density housing, these are the solutions.
Right.
But we turned our noses up at solutions, and so the problems persist over here, and we reject we reject what I thought was a very reasonable solution, and a lot of the things that were happening were based upon half-truths.
Yeah. Well, that's where
Or outright lies.
Yeah, that's where it's problematic, right? And especially when we build up this fervor on social media, and we go after principled people like Mike, for instance.
Yeah, and
I've seen a lot lately against Mike Schultz and the types of attacks.
Yeah, and I said you can have a disagreement on Mike Schultz and disagree on the flag and other, but for example, he is down there with the doctor who's with the COVID
right.
with the COVID cards, that he was out there supporting it, and that's to me is a big deal that you have the Utah Speaker of the House speaking out.
Yeah, and when you have him, when you have people who also showed up that says, I can't believe he's there because he did this and this and this and hasn't passed our complete test.
Yeah.
Somehow we're mad that he shows up to support something that we're interested in.
And as I said, I'm not sure how, ultimately, if you're going to have political power, you have to get a majority of the voters on your side.
Yeah.
And I'm still never sure how you get to 50% or 50% plus one when you're trying to annoy 45% of the people.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the purity test is based upon it's not based upon principle. And I still go back to the situation with Mike Lee and public lands. We can talk about the how it was done and some concerns there, but overall we were
Mike actually made some changes to it in response.
We had a chance, but once again, it wasn't a principled approach, because whatever Mike was going to do, they were going to attack. So it's very frustrating. Once again, I was shocked when people were going after Speaker Schultz, who was down there doing a good thing, and I thought was a courageous thing to do, based upon his position, and then we're criticizing him for it.
Yeah.
And so once again, how are we ever going to bring friends and allies to our side if we are always trying to turn people away?
Yeah. So let's talk about you're now chair of the Davis County Republican Party. What are things that you have plans for?
Well, one of the things I want to do as this upcoming year is, anybody knows me knows that I'm a very big opponent of SB 54. Uh-huh. I served as a Utah Republican Party spokesperson during our legal action, served on the committee. And one of the things I want to make sure that I do as chair this year is really fight the signature gathering. Because one of the things this last year as a Constitution and Bylaws chair in Davis County, I got through was basically stating that the only recognized method to secure our party's nomination, according to our Davis County documents, is the caucus-convention system. And so one of my frustrating things I'm going to let people know in Davis County is that with those signatures, people come to your home and say, hey, we're here on behalf of the Republican Party. Well, that's not accurate. The Republican Party is never going to send somebody out to gather signatures. And quite frankly, this violates our party bylaws.
As an official act of the Republican Party in Davis County, that's simply false if people go to the door and say that.
So I want to let people know that. But it's also important that we have a great caucus convention. We want to make sure that those are run as well as possible. I want to have a Lincoln Day dinner that is focused on principle and hopefully can bring topics that can unite us. Right now we've got the county controller election that we got thrown into, because it's the first time we've ever, in my experience, Davis County, which goes back to 98,
have someone resign,
that we've had to have a county-wide special convention that we had to put together. And basically, for me, it goes also back to our platform. So I'm really trying heavily to get back and put messaging out about our platform so people know what the Republican Party believes in Davis County. Because once again, it comes back to uniting. It's not uniting just to unite. It's uniting around a party platform that we agree with and will support, and finding people who are going to support that platform and act according to our platform when they're in public office.
Well, and that's the great thing about having a platform, right? Because if something can get through the debates that take place in order to make it to the platform, that's something that obviously the people agreed on.
Yeah, and
right?
in Davis County, we have a great platform. It's a very platform that really promotes those principles that I believe in of God, family, the Constitution, limited government. One of the things I love about our party platform, it talks about the power of the people. The power relies upon we the people.
Right.
Just like the Constitution. So encouraging people to make sure they get involved and really fight for those principles that have made this country great and will continue to make it great.
Yeah, very good. Well, we're out of time. You got any concluding remarks?
No, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for your work and the opportunity to come to speak here. But once again, if I could just say to people, we celebrated July 4th. We're going to celebrate Pioneer Day. Let's really focus on freedom and principles of freedom. Freedom needs to be preserved. And the only way we're going to protect and preserve freedom in this country and state is by focusing on those principles that unite us. And just like Pastor Beckel said, principles found in the Bible, principles found in the U.S. Constitution, and principles found in the Republican Party platform.
Very good. Thank you. Don Guymon. We'll see you guys next week.